Do you want to learn effective ways to build relationships, generate sales, and grow your business from successful entrepreneurs, startups, and CEOs without listening to a long interview? If so, you've come to the right place. Gresham Harkless values your time and is ready to share with you precisely the information you're in search of. This is the I Am CEO podcast.
Hello. This is Gresh from the IAM333 podcast, and I have two very special guests on the show today. I have Jenna and Jesse of Jesse and Jenna's Messy podcast. Jenna and Jesse, it's awesome to have you guys on the show.
Oh, thank you so much for asking us to do that. This.
Yes, I'm super excited to have you guys on. You guys are doing some awesome things, and I want to just read a little bit more about you guys so people can learn a little bit more about you. And Jesse Reynolds is a Canadian actor, host, and stand-up comedian. Jenna Mo is a scholarship-winning athlete and radio personality. Together, they hosted a major market morning show in Ottawa, Ontario for nearly 4 years with a specialty in celebrity gossip, local news, unusual headlines, and informative research studies. Now they're uncensored and online with their one-of-a-kind brand. You guaranteed a hilarious rundown of the week's most bizarre news, personal stories, interesting guests, and whatever they feel like talking about because it's their podcast and they do what they want. Some may say it's a mess, but really they're just perfectly imperfect. It's Jesse and Jenna's Messy podcast. Guys, are you ready to speak to the IMCO community?
Oh, for sure. I think we can all really learn from each other because podcasting it's a bit of a new adventure, especially for former radio professionals. You know, it's a lot different. And I think it's everyone's learning as we go, kind of.
Yeah. And you know what, Gresh, if any of those CEOs are single, so are we, okay? So.
Okay. That definitely let you know. So you guys just told everybody. So I wanted to hear, like, how'd you guys link up, and were you guys always on the radio together, or how did you start this podcast? Tell me a little bit more about that.
We have a really, really interesting story. I started on radio in Ottawa about 5.5 years ago. I had my own show by myself in the middays. And then our station decided to throw a contest, and it was called Jump's Greatest Gig. And it was a contest to find a morning show host. And that is when my life ended and Jesse was introduced into it.
And mine began.
Yeah.
Yes.
And, you know, he won the contest, and, you know, you can tell the rest of it because everything changed very quickly for us.
It did. And, you know, what's interesting about that is after I won that talent search, Jenna was sort of the host at the station at the time that had to call me to let me know I got through to each round. And at the time, there was no plans of her switching to the morning show. So it was kind of, what's the word, kismet. Yes. That we ended up together because we didn't think it was going to happen. But after hosting the morning show for about a year, there was some other personality changes and hosts left the show. And I said to our producers and our PDs, I said, give me Jenna. Me and Jenna would have the best show ever. And finally, after begging and pleading, they listened and they put us on mornings together, and kind of the rest is history, really.
Yeah. And, you know, we had a good run at it. And Canadian radio is a bit different from the US. I think we were unfortunately let go due to automation, syndication. It was actually an American syndicated show that kind of took our place in the morning. But that was when we decided, you know, it's not often that you find a host that you can automatically connect. Usually chemistry is the one thing that you have to work on.
Yeah.
We didn't have that. Like, we had immediate chemistry. We had to work on everything else. So when our jobs were done together on air, we went, we don't want this relationship to end. What can we do? And that was when our producer, John, reached out to us and said, why not a podcast? And that's what we did. And, you know, it's changed a lot. It started off as we almost formatted it like a radio show in an hour. And we realized that's not what podcasting is. It doesn't have to be that quick. You have time to talk. You have time to converse, time to dig a little bit deeper into what it may be, and also be unfiltered at the same time. So it's kind of evolved a lot over the past, I don't know how many months now.
8 months we've been doing this.
Yeah.
And you make a good point. One of the things that I realize in doing this is how different podcasting and radio is. A lot of people think they're the same. They're not at all, as Jenna just said. we can talk about sex and swear, Gresh.
Exactly. And it's a little bit harder to do that on radio, but it's great to kind of hear how you guys were brought together by the universe, so to speak. And now you guys are again, making history and everything. So I guess, could you tell us a little bit more on what we can expect to hear on your podcast and what you feel is kind of like your secret sauce and what sets you guys apart?
So our podcast now, we were doing 3 times a week, but now we've changed it a little bit to twice a week. We have an episode that comes out Wednesday, and that's when we reach out to interesting people, engaging, and we've had a range of guests. We've had, a fully transgendered woman on our show. We've also had Sally Jesse Raphael, the famous talk show host from the 80s and 90s.
Nice.
And we just want to look for engaging content, things that will interest you regardless what the topic may be.
Yeah, it's not always who has something they want to promote, but for instance, one of the guests we have coming up is a funeral director. So we'll dig into, what that's like and sort of those interesting conversations that a lot of people are maybe afraid to have, like with the transgender woman Jenna mentioned. We ask the tough questions that are, traditionally taboo to ask. We're not afraid to go there. The wine helps with that.
Yeah. And then on Fridays, we have an episode where we go over kind of the duh moments of the internet, where we find something, whether it be a study or a story out of Florida or whatever it may be. And we'll talk about that, and we'll do our Friday episodes. We call it WTF Friday. Kind of just, what did you just see on the internet? So yeah.
And when you asked about our secret sauce, one of the things that I love about us is that we almost sort of have gender swapped roles. I used to joke about that on our show because Jenna is a collegiate athlete. I'm a theater student. I'm also an openly gay host. So I always joke that I was the girl on the show and Jenna was the dude. And that dynamic really worked for us. And I think people responded to that.
Yeah, I think it definitely helps out when it's something other than the quote unquote norm, where you're hearing all the same things. So it helps you kind of break through. And I love that you guys have taken, like you talked about in the very beginning, like podcast is something that is not a completely new platform, but it's something that's constantly evolving. So you can kind of make it into what you want it to be rather than it having to be whatever it should be by whoever's rules. That doesn't really matter, I guess. And
if you do look at our reviews online, a lot of them say, and they're all good except for one.
Yep. 5 stars, baby.
that person must not have had vino.
Yeah, no, they also didn't like Britney Spears, or they loved Britney Spears, and we talked about Britney Spears, and I said,
yes.
We love Britney on this show. We love her.
Yes. I don't want any bad stars myself, so I appreciate that. So I wanted to switch gears a little bit and ask you guys for what I call a CEO hack. And this might be an app, a book, or a habit that you have, but it's something that makes you more effective and efficient.
I think we're still trying to figure out our hacks, but I think that's what is great about it, is we aren't scared to try things and realize that they're not working and switch gears. For example, one thing that we like to do a lot to help market it, because we don't have the money to be able to go out and pay for advertising and what it may be. So what we've done is take it upon ourselves. So when we record our podcast, we record it on video. Mm-hmm. And then at the end of the episode, one of us will take it home, we'll look at the video, and we'll cut anywhere from 15-second to 2-minute clips. And we'll add some audio visuals and stuff like that. And we'll post those on social media. And we use those almost as a tease, almost like a preview of what you're going to get. And those seem to be working really well for us. But we also made some mistakes with those. We used to have them posted 3 minutes long, and those weren't getting as many hits. So we go, okay, let's try something different. And I think that's really important when you are entering this podcasting world or trying to succeed almost in any industry, is don't be afraid to try things and they don't work.
Yeah, be adaptable. And also the power of the tease. Now, that's one thing that comes from radio that still applies to podcasts, because like Jenna said, when we shortened up the clips and we left them on sort of a cliffhanger, we noticed our numbers spike on the actual podcast because it made people want to go from the clip they saw on Facebook and actually download the podcast. Whereas when it was 3 or 4 minutes, they kind of got their fix and now I'm on to something else. So yeah, tease is huge.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense, especially because podcasting is a big community and a growing community, especially. So getting an opportunity to hear, why people started their podcasts, just like we're doing now, is definitely a great thing to tap into. Now I want to ask you guys for what I call a CEO nugget. And this is a word of wisdom or a piece of advice, or if you can hop into a time machine, what would you tell your younger business self?
Well, first of all, you said nugget. Weed is legal in Canada. You say nugget, it means something different to us.
I don't know if we have one together, but I've always said this, and even when on the show, I said, you got to risk it to get the biscuit.
That's a good one.
don't be afraid of failure. And you will fail. And some of the greatest people in the world have failed many, many times. I think it's about what you do with that failure.
Absolutely. I mean, you see those viral stories going around. Madonna was sharing how many rejections she got from record labels before she made it. Maybe a bad example nowadays. But, you're right. Like, even the most successful people out there failed many times before they succeeded. So you just got to get back on the horse, which in this business, it's hard to do because you're shot down and you're knocked down so often, and rejection is the name of the game. But if you persevere, you'll get there.
Yeah.
Absolutely. What kind of drives you guys to keep going, when you do have the ups and downs?
For me personally, it's passion. I absolutely love what I do, and I absolutely love working with Jesse. So at the end of the day, if an episode doesn't have the numbers that we thought it would, I also don't like to look at numbers too often because it does mess with me mentally. But at the end of the day, if it's not working, or if you get a note from someone saying you suck, I just remember, one, I still get to do something I love, and I get to work with someone that I chose to work with.
Checks in the mail, Jenna. Keep going is the vino, let's be honest.
There you go. Whatever works, right?
It is, whatever works. But also those moments where in between you'll get a message from a mom. Like, we just recently, we don't advertise our podcast to children, but one of the most awesome messages we got last week was a mom saying, her little boy, who was, how old was he, Jenna? Like 4 or 5? Too young, way too young. And he was like, put on Jesse and Jenna. That's my favorite story, Jesse and Jenna. And to get moments like that or comments like that, not necessarily that children are listening to us, but that moms appreciate us enough to put us on in the car, or, you realize the impact that you do have in people's lives. Because sometimes when you're in the studio, you don't see your audience, you don't know who's listening. So that feedback really keeps me going.
Yeah, and especially probably just like they say on social media, there's those people called lurkers that are listening and engaging, but you never really know about them. But to hear and get stories and feedback like that probably definitely helps out a lot. So that's always great to hear. And now I wanted to ask you my absolute favorite question, which is the definition of what it means to be a CEO. And we're hoping to have different quote unquote CEOs on this show. So what does being a CEO mean to you guys?
To me, being a CEO is, I'm going back to passion every time, is taking what you love in your life and being able to make it into something that you never thought you could make it into. A CEO is also entering what you think might be a great idea and not being afraid to turn around to something totally different. And also CEO is you are making your own decisions. That's a great thing because you're don't have anyone telling you what to do, but it's also a scary thing because at the end of the day, the decisions you make can directly affect you and only you at that time. Or if you do have employees, they can affect your employees. So, being a CEO is being responsible, being daring, and, but also being passionate.
And not waiting for permission. I think that's the problem. A lot of people wait for permission to do something, and CEOs get out there and make it happen, whether or not someone's giving them a platform to do it. That's what happened with this podcast. That's what our producer John did with a website he runs called blasttheradio.com. That's where our podcast is hosted. And real CEOs get out there and they start their projects, and they don't wait to be told it's okay to do it.
Absolutely. And they don't wait to be told. They're not waiting for the perfect time either, because a lot of times that time never comes. So I appreciate you guys for doing that and encouraging people to do that as well too. So I wanted to pass you the mic, so to speak, just to see if there's anything additional you can let our readers and listeners know. And then of course, how best they can get a hold of you, subscribe to your podcast, and find out about all the phenomenal things you guys are doing.
I just hope that listeners understand that, and you've probably talked to many CEOs and many entrepreneurs out there, and everyone has a similar story. I was down to my last 50 cents. I thought my life was ending. I thought I was going to be homeless, this and that. But you know what? Things turn, and everything comes down to timing. So even though times are really rough at one point, remember that timing is always on your side, and the right opportunities will happen at the right time. It's unfortunate that we live in a world of immediacy now, especially under younger people like millennials, where they expect everything to happen right away. Well, that's not how things happen. Rome wasn't built in a night, to be cliche. So, even though you have this amazing, incredible idea that you truly believe in, you've tried so hard to make it, to create it, whether that's getting financing or whatever it may be, even if every door is shut on you, there will always be a crack open in one of those doors. So don't ever give up. Sounds super cheesy.
It's true.
But don't, because, you know, and follow your gut. Your gut will tell you if you're on the right track or not.
It's true. And to that point, if you Google a list of celebrities that made it over the age of 40, you'll be shocked at how long that list is. Morgan Freeman's on that list. I mean, I could go on, and it blew me away the amount of people that got their big break after the age of 40, which traditionally you don't think is going to happen. Even look at successful people like Ellen DeGeneres. When her sitcom got canceled because she came out as gay, everyone thought that was it. We're never going to hear from her again. Now she's got the biggest talk show on TV. So don't give up. I think that's a great message.
Yeah. And as for where you can find our podcast, really anywhere that you find your podcast, we're on everything. We're on it's Apple Podcasts. Sorry. We're on Spotify. We're on Stitcher. You can also find us at messypodcast.com. And we are online. Facebook, it's at Jesse and Jenna. Wait.
Jesse and Jenna's Messy Podcast on Facebook. I got it. The vino's kicking in, Gresh.
It is. No worries.
On Facebook and on Instagram, we're at Jesse and JMO, JESSEJMO, and messypodcast.com.
Awesome. And just in case anybody might be drinking any vino, listen to this, we'll also have those links in the show notes as well. So I appreciate both of you guys, and I hope you have a phenomenal rest of the day.
Thank you for listening to the I Am CEO podcast powered by Blue 16 Media. Tune in next time and visit us at imceo.co. I Am CEO is not just a phrase, it's a community. Be sure to follow us on social media and subscribe to our podcast on iTunes, Google Play, and everywhere you listen to podcasts. Subscribe and leave us a 5-star rating. Grab CEO gear at www.ceogear.co. This has been the I Am CEO podcast with Gresham Harkless. Thank you for listening.